Hello, my friends. D.L. Anderson here. Welcome back to Transformation by Truth podcast as we share the truth concerning these last days and what you must do to save yourself from the violent times that are just ahead. Today's podcast is a word of truth accounting of the end times. The end is coming. The end is near. Today's podcast is entitled End Times 250, an intro to the sealing of the set apart ones. The podcast objectives are restate the importance of the guidelines of prophecy, reveal the season our world is currently in, analyze the importance of being prepared, and analyze the importance of being in tune with the Spirit. This lesson contains timelines and other visuals. Therefore, if you are listening to the podcast, I advise you to watch the video version on our website or YouTube, or request a PDF of the lesson so you can add the visual effect. To fulfill the 7 guidelines. Now, in the most recent podcast, we concluded our detailed analyses of the restoration of the nation of Israel, proving the restoration was indeed the first of the 7 seasons in these last days. 52 podcasts into this end time series, and you have achieved a fundamental understanding of the end times. You have also completed a detailed evaluation of the inaugural season of these last days. Congratulations. Well done. From now, and as I promised you early on in this end time series, we must move forward and continue with our detailed analyses of these last days by analyzing the second of the 7 seasons. Enter the sealing of the set apart ones. The timeline below should look very familiar to you, namely because we reviewed it constantly during the 100 level courses in this end time series. Reason being, it is the baseline of the end times as we know them. It is the most accurate, high-level time model for these last days. Therefore, I encourage you to bookmark this timeline and refer to it often, as it is at the foundation of everything I am teaching in this end time series. Now, per this timeline, you can clearly see that the sealing of the set apart ones is the second of the 7 seasons in these last days. I will prove this matter the same way I proved the restoration of the nation is not only an authentic prophetic event, but it is also the first season in these last days. All we have to do is fulfill the 7 guidelines, as we did for the restoration of the nation, and we will accomplish another major milestone in our understanding of the end times. The season we are currently in. Now, if you've been following this end time series from the beginning, I'm pretty sure you know the 7 guidelines for every word of prophecy by now. However, in case you don't, I will restate them, and I encourage you to bookmark these with our timeline for these last days. First, you have a purpose, why an event will happen. Second, a time, when it will happen. Third, A season, a sign confirming the time. Fourth, a messenger, one who has been licensed to prophesy what will happen. Fifth, the sequence, how it will happen. Sixth, the people, who the prophecy will happen to. And seventh, the place where the prophecy will happen. Now, as I have said often before, these 7 guidelines are crucial for the following reason, which I will offer as an interest point. Here again, as we continue to build upon the foundation of truth, I would encourage you to bookmark this point to harden your understanding. One of the easiest ways to determine if we are entertaining an authentic prophetic event is by checking all the boxes as it pertains to these 7 guidelines. Along these lines, if any prophecy rendered by man fails to fulfill any of these 7 guidelines, we should reject it, for it is not a word of truth. By the guiding hand of the Spirit, we invested 26 podcasts checking all the boxes as it pertains to the restoration of the nation of Israel. And we came to see clearly how it is not only an authentic prophetic event, it is also the only season in these last days that has already passed. From now, we must do the same with the sealing of the set apart ones. We must fulfill all 7 guidelines to prove the authenticity of this season while confirming this is the season our world is currently in. Prepared for what is to come. Now, unlike the restoration of the nation of Israel, in which we analyzed the 7 guidelines, beginning with purpose and ending with the places and the people, I will analyze the sealing of the set apart ones in reverse order. We will begin with the places and the people and end with the purpose. Along these lines, the people and places of the sealing correspond to the people and places of the restoration of the nation of Israel. Quite simply, the nation of Israel is being sealed in this season, and we are being sealed in the lands of our captivity. This speaks to the purpose of the restoration. To it, Yahuwah restored the nation in the first season in these last days, such that he could seal each member in the second season. Thus, it is impossible to be sealed if you have not been restored. Herein lies the transitory and sequential natures of these last days. For each season in these last days is heavily marked by transition. We are quickly moving from one season to the next, regardless of who is ready for the transition and who is not. For time waits for no man, neither does Elohim. Yahushua, Messiah, conveys the urgency of the transitory nature of these last days in many of his parables, specifically the parable of the 10 virgins. See Matthew 25, 1 through 13. Seeing as this is one of the most prominent parables concerning the kingdom of heaven, specifically these last days, I will reference this parable frequently throughout this end time series. Therefore, I encourage you to become familiar with this parable and bookmark it if you are led. Now, as it pertains to the transitory nature of the sealing of the set apart ones, we must appreciate the interval in this parable when the bridegroom arrives. To wit, at his arrival, only 5 of the virgins were present, for only 5 of the virgins were prepared. Matthew 25:10 reads, "And while they, i.e., the 5 foolish virgins, went to buy, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready, i.e., the 5 wise virgins, went in with him to the wedding feast, and the door was shut." Look, here lies the inflection, and one of the most important matters you must realize concerning the end times and these last days. That is the question: why did the 5 foolish virgins go out to buy? Here is why. The 5 foolish virgins went out to buy because they were not prepared. It is true that they took oil in their lamps, but they didn't take oil with their lamps. In effect, they took enough to succeed in a scenario in which the bridegroom came according to their expectations. Here lies the problem. The bridegroom didn't come when they expected him. In accordance with verse 5, he tarried. He tarried so long, they all fell asleep, i.e., the 5 wise and the 5 foolish virgins. Look, here lies another inflection, another crucial matter you must appreciate concerning these last days and life in general. I ask you to consider it carefully as you work towards your election and your attainment of the seal of Elohim. Life is filled with time and chance events that constantly prevent things from going and or ending the way we plan. This is true even when our expectations are aligned with our present understanding of the Father's will. Here lies the complexity of the matter. Vis-a-vis, we must be aligned with the Father's will in real time. We must stay on the track when his will evolves, because more often than not, it will. Lo, here lies the power of preparation. Vis-a-vis, if we are walking in the Spirit, he will ensure that we are prepared for every scenario. Trust me, the Father will not set us up to fail. Rather, he will make sure we are aware of every progression of his will, such that we are not caught off guard. The key is we must constantly be in tune with the Spirit. We must continue in prayer, fasting, and focus. We must be so close to our Master that we never lose sight of him, for this is the only way we can be prepared for what is to come. You are going to need more oil. Now, here again, the reason why the 5 foolish virgins were not prepared is sure. It's because they were not in tune with the Spirit, i.e., they were not in a place where they could hear his voice saying, "You're going to need more oil." This reality bridges the sequential nature of these last days to the transitory. Vis-a-vis, only the Spirit knows the sequence of time, and thus only he can prepare us for each corresponding transition. as it pertains to the sequence between the restoration of the nation and the sealing of the set apart ones. The former was instituted to prepare us for the latter. As I said before, we were restored in the first season in these last days so that we could be sealed in the second season. As for the Father, he made sure his chosen elect were prepared for this transition by ensuring we understood the sequence of events. Then he provided us with various signs to ensure we also understood the time. Next, he empowered us to endure, for every season is defined by a series of tests and trials we must pass for the Father to carry us into the next season. My dear friends, it doesn't matter where you turn, an examination is always ahead. Lo, this speaks to a key interest point I have stated before, but I have been led to restate this due to its vast significance and the spirit of deception that is at work. Please consider it faithfully and examine yourself. Just because you survive one season and make it into the next season does not mean the Father is with you or that he is guarding you. Quite the contrary. Many are alive today only because of the model of time and chance. And yet, here's the thing you must note about time and chance. It is very much akin to the figurative model of luck, for it too will run out. When it does, those who have not been chosen will be exposed for who they were and have been all along. Men and women who had a form of godliness but denied the power thereof. Now, here is the truth. If the spirit of discernment is working in you, then you will be able to discern the chosen elect from those who are essentially waiting for their number to come up. More than anything, you will clearly see how their beliefs are not built for longevity. That is to say, their beliefs are stagnant and limited, and they do not support a progressive work of the Spirit. They are as the 5 foolish virgins who had enough sense to know they needed a lamp, but they were oblivious to the fact that the Spirit was crying out all the while, saying, "You're going to need more oil." Likewise, many in these last days caught wind of the restoration message, and yet they did not embrace the spirit behind this message. They would not submit to the author and the finisher of our faith. Many of these appeared to run well for a season within the season, and yet somewhere in between, they ran out of oil. Alas, their ministries dried up. Their physical and spiritual lives became tattered and are now ruined. The list goes on. Seeing as we are in a new season, we've no need to deliberate on the failed ministries and ministers of the restoration. Remember, our focus is on the people and the places of the sealing of the set apart ones. For that reason, we will continue this line of thought in the upcoming podcast. We will continue to analyze the people and places of the sealing of the set apart ones. And in doing so, we will come to see who was truly restored. Now, here is the final word. It has been written, watch ye therefore, for ye know not when the master is coming. Not only this, but it has also been written, the master shall come on a day when you do not expect him, and at an hour you do not know. This is why I always say, check your expectations at the door. They'll do you no good over here. All they will do is ensure that you are not prepared for the Father's appointed times. Remember, the appointed times are the intervals of transition. They are the stage gates that afford us safe passage from one season in these last days to the next, so long as we are prepared for them. When we were children, we played a game called hide and go seek. You may be familiar with it. A group of children went out to hide themselves, not to be found, while one child looked for them at the end of a countdown. Now, the countdown was loud enough that all the children who went hiding could hear. And before the seeker went looking for those who had hidden themselves, he or she cried out, saying, ready or not, here I come. My dear friends, these are essentially the same words the Father speaks by his Spirit to all who have been called. At the end of each season, he cries out, saying, ready or not, here I come. The question of the hour is, are we in tune with the Spirit? Are we close enough to him to where we can clearly hear his voice? If you were, you understand everything I am saying and where I am coming from. And you know exactly how we shall fare. For when others said, the master has delayed his coming, we said, thank you, Father, for giving us more time to prepare. Now, here is what's next. We completed today's podcast, End Times 250, an intro to the sealing of the set apart ones. And the next podcast is entitled End Times 252, the foundation of the seal of Elohim. I will post this podcast on Monday, January 8th, 2024. Until then, my friends, continue to be led by the Spirit of Elohim. Continue to watch, continue to pray, continue in fasting, and most of all, continue to be focused, for the end is coming. The end is near.